Hello and welcome to Poliwood. I'm Roger Simon.
And I'm Lionel Chetwynd.
In a minute, we'll have more from Matt Atchity of Rotten Tomatoes for a quick look at the releases for next week. And also, Lionel and I are going to discuss the whole spate of Republican documentaries that are rocking it up at the box office. But first, Lionel, while I was working hard for PJTV at the convention, you were in your leisure sitting there with your cigar watching MSNBC?
My cigar, my drink, and my velvet robe. Yes, you were working hard and working wonderfully, by the way, and proving what we said last week when we were talking about the networks, that eventually, in fact, almost now, you're pushing out the news cycle. You're going to take it over. And really good work. So good that I took time away from Fox to watch MSNBC, which I had never done. I recorded it, and so after the speech, in my leisure, I went, I turned it on, and there was Rachel Maddow, who I found a little intimidating. First time you see her, intimidated me anyway.
Well, she's very intelligent.
All right, why not? And she said, well, the big event tonight was Paul Ryan's speech, and this is to be the speech of his life. He was to, if he didn't really give us oratory, it was all lost. And we have a professor of speech with us, the acknowledged expert in America on oratory, and the camera opens up, and it's Al Sharpton. Okay, so like, I mean, this could be a Saturday Night Live sketch. He then went on into, and I want to be careful, but it was incomprehensible. Words improperly used, serendipitous, I mean, it was just unbelievably garbled. They go from there to Chris Matthews' effort for the night was to prove that Condoleezza Rice's speech was actually a closeted message to the Republicans that they're being racist and they have to stop. That's why she mentioned it was, and he made Andrea Mitchell, who looked like she had really passed away. I felt very bad for her. She didn't look good. I mean, just didn't look good, and not committed at all to what she was doing. And he interrupted her interview with Condoleezza to try and get Condoleezza to say, yes, I'm very worried about racism in the Republican Party. And she just kind of said no and went on going. Until Chris Matthews can get a credential as an African-American, he will be an unhappy man.
Well, maybe he will. But anyway.
And so I left and I felt badly about having knocked Fox last week. Bring it on. All is forgiven.
That's what this is about. Yes, okay. Look, here's the thing. Today, we should give some praise to Dinesh D'Souza because he is a big success. It's a surprise to me. I like the movie, by the way, but looking here at box office on 2016, Obama's America is $20 million for a documentary. You made documentaries. How would you rank that?
I would rank that better than anything I did. Pretty soon he's going to pass Michael Moore. For a guy that really didn't have a brand in the movie going and in the movie going public, no one knew who he was. You didn't get 20 million out of Washington intellectuals and think tank people who know who Dinesh is. I was really impressed with it too, by the way. I thought it was, I mean, there were technical problems using telephones. Some of the interviews they tried to get a little too jazzy with, but the information was extraordinary. Roger, while you were sitting in and you were doing your part in the civil rights movement that consumed this country, and certainly in the Vietnam War issue, the rest of the world was consumed with something called anti-colonialism, neo-colonialism. 1958.
Well, the Vietnam thing was totally related to that. I mean.
Well, but it was not. But somehow got abstracted in the United States, became war and anti-war, and certainly the left here made it seem as if Ho Chi Minh was just another Jomo Kenyatta. Because, but mind you, if they know what Mau Mau was, that wouldn't have sounded so good. But he was another Nkrumah in Ghana. Sure. He was just a good guy, and of course that was a terrible mistake. He wasn't. He was. That was closer to the proxy wars in Angola and Mozambique with the Russians. There were various positions on the, because I grew up in Canada and the UK largely in that time. I did register for the draft and my board gave me a pass because of my Canadian military service. Then I went to work for Columbia in England. And there were various positions. On the one side, there were the Belgians, leave them. They just left them and they let the country go. One day they were there, the next day they weren't. The French tried to hold on to the bitter end, and it was only when de Gaulle promised the OAS that they'd stamp down and reassert colonial power, and then betrayed them and put them all in jail, de Gaulle, and yet he's still a hero. There was another, which was don't let go, the OAS. The British tried to leave behind them a civil society with roads, schools, hospitals, running water, police, courts, and so on and so forth. It didn't last that long, but they certainly made every effort to do so. Now, the argument of the anti-colonialists was that it didn't matter how you did it, you've got to get out. And they preferred the chaos in the Belgian colonies in a curious way to the British order of things because it was harder to displace. The most extreme anti-colonialist movement were the communists and the leftists who said it is not enough that, for example, the British be driven from West Africa. They must be punished. The Europeans got their wealth from us. They must be punished.
No, and that's what D'Souza says is behind Obama's motivations, essentially, for everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But all of that information, which somehow was the stuff of my life when I was there, living in Canada and Great Britain, with the whole Biafran thing, actually got missed here. And I never thought about that until I sat in this film and said, Americans need to know this. Go see this film, because he wasn't shaped by American civil rights. He wasn't shaped by Vietnam. He was shaped by what was going on in the rest of the world. Anti-colonialism. White people are bad.
Oh, yes, that's now, indeed he was shaped. I don't agree 100% with D'Souza. I agree with that he was very much shaped by this. I think there are other aspects. But he does a great job, I think, in this movie of showing that aspect of Obama. And what is interesting to me is that the public is very interested in that. I don't know about you, but I was very surprised that they would be that interested.
Well, because then he connected, well, I think there's a reason for it. He then, of course, connects it to communism. He does explain there was a range of ideas. That's because it answers so many problems. It's Occam's razor. If you are truly, especially if you're someone who voted for Obama, this to me is the power of the film. You voted for Obama, and you're watching this thing come apart, and what did I do wrong? Is it the Republicans? What's to blame? You go and you see this film, and you come home and you see your friends, you know what? I understand it now. I have a different point of view. And I think they're very soft with them. And Shelby Steele is very powerful in the film as well.
Shelby is great in the movie. Absolutely.
I had one criticism, and that's I felt it ended on ellipses. That, okay, if he's reelected, it's not going to be nice in 2016. Almost as they don't want to predict what he's likely to do.
All right. One other quick thing, and that is that there's another movie out there coming out right away, because Hope and the Change, that Steve Bannan and Dave Bossie did with the help of Pat Caddell. There's a PJTV video on that I did in Tampa. Right. I commend that too. And one other thing about both of these movies, because of the nature of the world in which we live, the commercials for these movies will be seen more. This thing Bossie was very aware of and spoke about. I would like to see D'Souza, if he's listening to this, with his $20 million in grosses, to start running a lot of commercials for his movie on primetime TV, if there's any room left. I don't know if there is. And now let's go to Matt at Rotten Tomatoes for what's in the theaters this week.
Hi, this is Matt Atchity, Editor-in-Chief of RottenTomatoes.com, here to let you know what's fresh and what's rotten in theaters this weekend. First up is The Word, starring Bradley Cooper and Zoe Saldana. This is a story about a writer who finds an unpublished manuscript, passes it off as his own, and then has to live with the consequences. The critics, for the most part, aren't that wild about this movie. It's only at about 40% so far, but it's early yet. That score is probably going to change. But they mostly say that it doesn't work very well. It's kind of cliched, not very dramatic, and they don't really care for it. Next up, 2016, Obama's America is a documentary co-directed by Dinesh D'Souza. Now, Dinesh D'Souza wrote a book called The Roots of Obama's Rage, and this movie, as you can imagine, has an agenda. It definitely is pushing D'Souza's view of Obama as an anti-colonialist. He says that pretty much all of Obama's decisions are based on that point of view. Now, I've seen the movie. I can't say that I personally agree with it, but I think it does effectively get across his agenda, kind of in the Michael Moore school of documentary filmmaking. It's not particularly balanced, but I think it is effective at getting its point across. Most of the critics don't really like this movie. It's only at about 36% so far, but I think a large part of that is because people don't agree with him. Some of the more right-wing critics do like this movie, and I think that criticism is going to be hard to read here because it's going to be hard for any critic to separate their own political views versus the art of the movie. That's it for the movies this week. For all of the latest Tomato Meter scores and movies that are out on DVD this week, make sure to check RottenTomatoes.com.
Thanks, Matt. This is Roger Simon.
And Lionel Chetwynd.
We'll see you next time in Poliwood.